Hello everyone, we're going to look at a new topic just to finish off year 10, and this topic is excretion. Now you probably remember excretion is one of the processes that you learnt that all living organisms do. If you think back to Mrs. Gren, E stood for excretion. So what is excretion? Hopefully you remember that it's to do with getting rid of toxic waste products that have been made inside your body. So there's lots of processes going on inside the cells of your body, and those processes will make waste products, and some of those will be poisonous or toxic. So it's really important that your body will excrete those toxic waste products. Okay, so you need to make sure that you know that that's excretion and get the definition copied down into your notes there. You can pause the video as you write that down. Now, there are a lot of processes that are important to keep your body functioning properly. And those processes that maintain balance in your body come under the umbrella term called homeostasis. And it comes from two Greek words which really mean to keep the internal environment of your body the same. So what kind of things need to be kept constant or kept the same in your body? Now, you don't need to write these down. We're just thinking about them. So obviously, if your temperature goes up or down, that's a sign that you're not well. So your temperature should be kept the same to keep your body functioning properly. The amount of water in your body and the level of water in your blood has to be kept the same. The amount of glucose, or the concentration of glucose in your blood, should be kept the same. And for most of us, that happens normally. For some people who are diabetic, they need to check that and they need to take action if the level of glucose isn't right. But for most people, that happens automatically. And one more thing, there are lots of other ones, but one that we're going to mention today is the amount of salt in your body. You know that eating too much salt is bad for you, but your body has to maintain a certain level of salt. So it's not just like salt, like sodium chloride, but things like potassium, calcium, magnesium, and so on. So getting back to homeostasis, it's all those different processes that keep your body at the right level, at the right temperature, the right level of water, and so on. That's homeostasis. So what about the kidneys? What have the kidneys got to do with this? Well, the kidneys are responsible for keeping the water and the salt balance right in your body. And there's a special term for that process, and it's called osmoregulation. So you need to make sure you get that copied down. It's osmoregulation. Maybe you've noticed that if you are out and it's a very hot day, maybe you're doing some exercise or you're lying out in the sun, you don't produce very much urine, and it's actually quite dark, and that means it's concentrated. Or if you've been drinking a lot of water or drinks during the day, you end up running to the toilet a lot. You're producing a large volume of urine, and it's very watery, it's very dilute. So your kidneys are responsible for regulating the water balance and the salt balance in your body. So what about water balance? Well, the volume of water you take in and the volume of water that you give out every day should be equal if it's going to be in balance. So how do we get water into our bodies? Well, obviously we mentioned drinking there. So whenever we drink fluids, we're taking water in. There's also water in a lot of the food that we eat. If you think of a lettuce or a lollipop or lots of fruit, there's water in all of those foods. Another way we get water is from the chemical reactions that we mentioned are happening inside the cells in our body all the time. Some of those reactions will release water. So there's 3 ways that we can gain water. So we need to have that written down. We gain water by drinking, from the water contained in the food that we eat, and from chemical reactions in the body. Now, I'm going to leave this, you can pause and look at the slide to get it copied down if you haven't got it down already. We're going to move on here. How do we lose water then? How does water come out of our bodies? Well, I mentioned maybe you're exercising. What do you do when you exercise? You sweat. and there's water in the sweat. So that's one way that you can lose water. Whenever you breathe, we learned earlier in the year that the breath that you breathe out is moist. It's saturated with water vapour. So that's another way that we lose water every day. Obviously, when you go to the toilet and you produce urine, there's a lot of water in that. And as well as that, when you produce solid waste, faeces, there's some water in the faeces as well. So 4 ways that we can lose water, 3 ways that we can take it in. So if you haven't got that written down, you need to pause the video and get it written down onto your sheet. So what about the kidney then? This is a photograph of a real human kidney. It's actually about to be transplanted into a patient. So what do you know about your kidneys? Well, we have 2 kidneys, or most people have 2 kidneys. A lot of textbooks say that they're bean-shaped organs. Well, if you've seen kidney beans, they get their name from the shape of your kidneys. And we've got a diagram there of how they're arranged in the male and the female body. The only difference is that the reproductive systems. Now, they're not part of the reproductive system, but they fit in around it, so that's why they're there. So you've got 2 kidneys. They're under your rib cage and they're towards the back of your body, and this diagram here shows you where you would find them. Now, you can't feel them, but that's where they are roughly. So what do the kidneys do? They're part of the urinary system. That's the system that makes urine. And that means that they filter the blood, removing the waste from it, but they also regulate the amount of water in your body, and we said that was osmoregulation. Now, you need to get some of those words copied into your notes as well, so you might need to pause the video. We're going to move on and look at the urinary system. In this diagram, we can see the 2 kidneys, and each kidney has got blood vessels taking blood to it and taking blood away from it. So this is the aorta, the main artery in your body that comes from the heart, and branching off that we've got the renal artery. The word renal, if you come across that, it means it's connected with the kidney. So the renal artery is taking blood to the kidney. There, the blood will be filtered by a process called ultrafiltration, and we'll look at that in a moment. And the waste products, the harmful products, any extra water is taken out of the blood, and so we've got really clean or filtered blood coming back to the circulatory system. What's the opposite to an artery? Well, it's a vein, so this is called the renal vein, and it takes it back to the main vein in your body, which is called the vena cava. Now that's on one side of your body, this is the other side of the body, same thing, kidney. We've got a renal artery taking blood to it, the blood gets filtered, the cleaned blood goes back through the renal vein, back to the vena cava. Now, this is really just that diagram put in context of sort of the main part of your body, the torso. So we've got the 2 kidneys, the renal artery branching off the aorta there, and there's another renal artery. When the blood flows in, we say that it's filtered, but it's a special type of filtration, and it's called ultrafiltration. Okay, and that's one of the processes that you need to put in to your notes there. So we're the top part of the urinary system. You've talked about the main large artery and vein. So the main large vein is the vena cava, and the aorta is the main artery. And we've mentioned the renal vein and the renal artery are the branches really to and from the kidney. The next missing word that you need to write down is ultrafiltration. And that's where we've said that the blood is filtered and small molecules are removed. This process is called ultrafiltration. ultrafiltration. So in your blood, you've got blood cells. They're too big. They're not going to leave the blood. They'll stay in the blood vessels. You've also got large protein molecules. They're too big to get filtered out. But the waste products and also some of the glucose and the salts that your body actually needs get filtered out of the blood. The things that your body needs eventually get absorbed back again. But what's left behind is the waste products and any extra water or any extra salts. Now, so getting back to the diagram then, blood flows in through the renal arteries, gets into the kidney, it's filtered by a process called ultrafiltration, and then the cleaned or the filtered blood passes through the renal vein here and here, back to the vena cava, back to your heart. So what about the water and the salts and the waste products? They flow into this vessel here. Now the liquid that we're talking about is called urine, and that's spelled U-R-I-N-E. And it flows through these tubes here. So we've got a tube here called a ureter, and a tube here also obviously called a ureter, and it's carrying urine from the kidney down to here, which is the bladder. Now the bladder, in this diagram, they sort of cut it away so you can see where these two ureters join and the urine flows into the bladder. The bladder will fill up, but there's a ring of muscle at the base of the bladder, and it's a ring of muscle that's usually contracted. So if it's contracted, it's closed over like that, and that means the urine flows in there but doesn't go any further. Whenever you go to the toilet, you send impulses to that muscle, your brain sends impulses to that muscle to tell it to relax. It relaxes, it opens up, and the urine passes through this tube here, and this tube is called the urethra, U-R-E-T-H-R-A, urethra, and out of your body. So that happens when you go to the toilet. Now that ring of muscle is also sometimes called a sphincter muscle. Now you have a number of sphincter muscles in your body. It's just a general term for that kind of ring of muscle. Now, hopefully you've got all that in your notes. Your notes are complete. Hopefully you have a good idea of what's happening. We're going to test how well you've been listening. So we've got a list of the parts that we talked about, and we've got a list of what they do, their functions, and we're going to see if we can match the parts and the functions together. So if we start off by looking at kidney, we'll take this one here. There's kidney, and we've got a blood vessel which is bringing blood to the kidney. So that's called the renal, and hopefully you're saying artery. So if we look at the part, renal artery, what does it do? It takes blood to the kidney. So yeah, brings waste to the kidneys in the blood. So that's the artery, brings waste in the kidneys in the blood. Ultrafiltration happens in here. We've got another vessel taking blood the other way, and that's the renal vein. And that's taking the cleaned blood away from the kidneys. Taking the clean blood away from the kidneys, that's the renal vein. So we've covered these two. That's the kidney. What does the kidney do? Well, we've said that it filters the blood. It basically removes urea and other chemicals from the blood. Now, the urine travels through a tube down here to the bladder. And then there's another tube there. They both begin with U. Hopefully you've remembered this one is called a ureter, and this one is called a urethra. So the ureter, down here, transports urine from the kidney to the bladder. So that's G. That's ureters. And because we have two kidneys, we have two ureters. Transports urine from the kidneys to the bladder. Bladder, basically it stores the urine, so bladder and A. And then we've got a sphincter muscle, this ring of muscle down here that keeps the bladder closed until you go to the toilet and you relax it. And finally, the urethra, carries urine out of the body. Okay, so hopefully that made sense to you there. Now, let's move on, because sometimes things don't always work the right way. So if we look on here, yeah, sometimes people catch diseases, and some of those diseases will affect their kidneys. Or maybe somebody's in a car crash or a bad accident, and their kidneys have been damaged during that accident. Or maybe they've been poisoned severely, or they've had severe dehydration. Any of those things can cause one or both of your kidneys to stop working. Now, if it's only affecting one kidney, you should be fine, because you can actually survive with just one kidney. I know a couple of people that only have one kidney and they're fine, they're able to do everything as normal. But if both of your kidneys are affected, that means your blood isn't going to be filtered. That means the poisons, the chemicals are still going to be in your blood, and they're going to damage the cells in your body. And if you aren't treated, you're going to get very ill and eventually you die. So there's two main options here. First one is kidney dialysis. And that's where someone goes to hospital and they get their arteries connected up to a big machine, and the blood flows out of their body into the kidney, artificial kidney machine. And the artificial kidney machine, if we look at it, the artificial kidney machine takes their blood and it filters it. Now we'll look at this probably in more detail next week. And so the harmful waste products and the extra water and the extra salts and so on are taken out in this machine. So the blood flowing through there is relatively clean, but it takes a long time to do that. So the patient would usually have to go to hospital maybe 3 times a week, and each treatment might last about 4 hours. So if you factor that into your lifestyle, it would really impact on going to school. Would you be able to go on holidays? Would you be able to go away from the hospital for a week, 2 weeks? Well, no, you wouldn't. You'd have to make arrangements for that, and that could be very complicated. So that impacts on the patient's life, because they're having to go every couple of days to the hospital for treatment. What most kidney patients want is a transplant, where you get someone else's kidney. As we said, you can't actually survive with one kidney. So one of my friends donated a kidney to her daughter, and so she had the operation. They were both in hospital at the same time. They took her kidney, and meanwhile her daughter was in the next operating theatre, and she was getting prepped ready to accept the new kidney. And they're both doing fine, and that was about 10 years ago. So that is really what most people want. Okay, so we've reached the end of the video. Hopefully you've got all your notes filled in. If you haven't, you can rewind, look at the bits that you've missed. The next assignment is just a short quiz, 10 short questions on what we've been talking about today. Okay, bye.